The rope bit into Elena's palms as she hauled the heavy bucket of coal up the narrow staircase, her arms burning with exhaustion after 14 hours of labor. Below her, the grand halls of Ravencrest Palace echoed with the sounds of the evening banquet. Laughter, clinking crystal, the soft strains of a string quartet playing Mozart for the noblest families in Valadoria. Up here, in the servants' passages, there was only the scrape of her worn boots against stone and the bitter draught that crept through cracks in the ancient walls. She was 22 years old, had worked at Ravencrest since she was 16, and had learned long ago that the palace contained two entirely separate worlds. The one above, where silk gowns and polished boots walked upon Persian carpets beneath chandeliers dripping with crystal, and the one below, where girls like her hauled coal, scrubbed floors, emptied chamber pots, and existed as ghosts to the nobility they served. Elena reached the top of the stairs and paused to catch her breath, pressing her forehead against the cold stone wall. Her muscles ached. Her feet throbbed inside boots that had worn thin in the soles, and her stomach had been growling since midday, when she had given her bread ration to a weeping kitchen maid who had been beaten for accidentally breaking a plate. That was who Elena was, the girl who gave away her last crust of bread because she could not bear to see another person suffer. Her mother had called it foolishness. You will starve yourself into an early grave, Elena, always thinking of others before yourself. But her mother was dead now, taken by the fever that had swept through the servants' quarters 3 winters past, and Elena had no one left to scold her for her soft heart. She pushed herself upright and continued down the corridor, the bucket of coal heavy in her grip. The palace servants took turns receiving leftover food from the kitchens, a small mercy after the long hours of labor. And tonight was Elena's night. She had been looking forward to a bowl of warm soup and perhaps a heel of bread, if the cook was feeling generous. She rounded the corner toward the servants' staircase that led down to the kitchens when something made her stop. A shadow moved beneath the stone archway that led to the garden. Elena's heart seized for a moment. The palace had been plagued by rumors of thieves lately, though no one dared speak of it openly. A few small items had gone missing from the noble quarters, and the head of household had threatened severe punishment for whoever was responsible. But this shadow was not creeping. It was sitting. Elena set down her coal bucket and crept closer, her hand instinctively reaching for the small knife she kept tucked in her apron pocket, not for violence, but for cutting bread and cheese. She had learned to be cautious in the palace corridors after dark. "Who's there?" she called softly. The shadow moved, and Elena saw that it was a man, an old man, by the looks of him, hunched against the cold stone, wrapped in a threadbare coat that had once been fine, but was now frayed at the elbows and stained with dirt. He looked up at her, and even in the dim light of the single oil lamp that flickered in the hallway, Elena could see that his face was lined with age, his hair white as snow, his beard unkempt and gray. His eyes, though, his eyes were sharp, intelligent. They studied her with an intensity that made her feel as though he could see straight through her plain wool dress and worn apron, straight into her heart. "Forgive me, miss," the old man said, his voice rough and cracked. "I did not mean to startle you. I was only resting." Elena took another step closer, her fear giving way to something else, a tug at her heart that she recognized too well. Compassion. The old man was clearly destitute. His boots were worn through in places. His hands, visible beneath the torn sleeve of his coat, were calloused and red with cold. "Sir, are you lost?" she asked gently. "This is Ravencrest Palace. It is not a place for—" she hesitated, uncertain how to phrase it kindly. "It is not a place where strangers are welcome." The old man gave a soft, humorless laugh. "I am aware of that, miss. Believe me, I am intimately aware. He tried to push himself to his feet but stumbled, catching himself against the wall with a pained grunt. Elena rushed forward instinctively, reaching out to steady him. "Please, sir, be careful," she said, her hand on his arm. Through the worn fabric of his coat, she could feel that he was trembling, whether from cold or weakness, she could not tell. "Forgive me," he said again, his voice strained. "I am not as spry as I once was. I came here seeking—" He paused, glancing away. "It does not matter. I will trouble you no further." He moved to leave, but Elena's hand tightened on his arm. "Sir, have you eaten today?" The old man turned back to look at her, and something flickered in those sharp eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or wariness. "I have not," he admitted after a long moment. Elena did not think. She never did, when her heart was speaking. She released his arm and knelt beside him on the cold stone floor, reaching into the pocket of her apron. She had saved a bit of bread from breakfast, a small, hard roll that she had been planning to soften with her soup. She pulled it out and held it out to him. "Please," she said. "It is not much, but it will help with the hunger." The old man stared at the bread in her hand as though she had offered him a fortune. "You would give me your food? You do not even know my name." Elena smiled. "I know your face. I know that you are cold and hungry and have no one to help you. That is enough." She sat down beside him on the stone floor, ignoring the chill that seeped through her threadbare dress. She broke the bread in half and offered one piece to him. "Come," she said. "Sit with me. I have a few minutes before I must return to my duties." The old man hesitated. Then, slowly, he took the bread from her hand. "Why?" he asked. The word hung in the air between them. Why would a woman with so little share what she has with a stranger? Elena considered the question. It was not the first time she had been asked it. The other servants often called her foolish. The kitchen maids whispered that she was too soft, too trusting, that the world would devour her one day. "Because being poor should never mean being treated as though you are worthless," she said quietly. "My mother used to say that a person's worth is not measured by what they have in their pockets, but by what they have in their heart. I am only trying to live by her words." The old man was silent for a long moment. Then he took a bite of the bread and chewed slowly, his sharp eyes never leaving her face. "You are a rare soul," he said finally, "rarer than you know." Elena laughed softly. "I am a maid, sir. There is nothing rare about me. I scrub floors and haul coal and empty chamber pots. But I also believe that the world is a better place when we help each other. That is all." She rose to her feet, brushing off her apron. "I must go now. The kitchens will close soon, and I have not yet had my supper." The old man looked up at her, and for just a moment, Elena saw something in his expression that she could not quite identify. Respect, perhaps, or gratitude. But there was something else, too, something that made her pause. "You have given me your bread," he said. "Will you not go hungry tonight?" "I will manage," Elena said with a smile. "I always do." She picked up her coal bucket and walked toward the staircase that led down to the kitchens. But at the top of the stairs, she paused and looked back. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked. The old man's eyebrows rose slightly. "You wish to see me again?" "I wish to make sure you are still alive," Elena said simply. "Winter is cruel, and the nights are cold. If you have nowhere to go, I can bring you some warm tea, and perhaps a bit of stew, if the cook is feeling generous." The old man stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will be here," he said. Elena smiled and descended the stairs, leaving the old man sitting alone in the shadow of the archway. She did not see the way his expression shifted as she disappeared, the sharp intelligence in his eyes giving way to something that might have been wonder or disbelief. She did not know that the old beggar she had just shared her bread with was the Duke of Ravenshire. She did not know that for the past 3 weeks, Alistair Edmund Ravenshire had been secretly leaving the palace at night, disguising himself as a poor, homeless old man. He had been testing the people of his household and his kingdom, trying to understand who would show kindness when there was nothing to gain, who would offer compassion without knowing his name. She did not know that the other servants had walked past him without a second glance, that several had laughed at his worn clothes and called him a disgrace, that one young footman had even kicked at him, telling him to move along, that vagrants were not welcome near the palace. But Elena had sat beside him. She had shared her bread. She had asked his name, not to pry, but to offer warmth. And as Alistair sat alone in the darkness, the half-eaten bread still in his hand, he found himself thinking of the words his father had spoken to him on his deathbed. Alistair. A title can make a man important, but only his choices can make him worthy. The greatest test of a man's character is how he treats those who can give him nothing in return. For years, Alistair had believed that kindness was a myth, that people smiled and bowed because of his wealth and power, not because of any goodness in their hearts. His experiment had seemed to prove him right, as person after person walked past the old beggar with disdain or indifference. But Elena had changed everything. She had given him the only food she had. She had done so without hesitation, without expectation. She had called him Sir, and treated him with dignity, as if he were a person, not a problem to be swept away. And she had promised to return. Alistair pulled the collar of his worn coat tighter against the cold, and watched the servant's door where Elena had disappeared. For the first time in years, he felt something he had thought long dead within him: hope. The following evening, Elena finished her duties earlier than usual. The palace was quieter tonight. The Duke had traveled to the neighboring estate for a hunting party, or so the household staff had been told. Without the demands of the nobility, the servants had a rare moment of peace. Elena used that peace to visit the kitchens, where she convinced the cook to let her have a small pot of stew and 2 thick slices of bread. "For an old beggar?" the cook had asked, her face pinched with disapproval. "Elena, child, you are too kind for your own good. That man is probably a drunkard. He will take your kindness and use it to buy cheap gin." "Perhaps," Elena had said, "but perhaps not, and I would rather risk being deceived than risk letting someone die of cold and hunger when I could have helped." The cook had sighed and handed over the stew. "You have a good heart, girl, but the world will break it one day. Then it will break knowing I did what was right," Elena had replied. Now she stood in the archway where she had met the old man the previous night, the stew warm in her hands. But the archway was empty. Elena's heart sank. Had he moved on? Had he found shelter somewhere else? Or had he simply... She did not want to think of the alternative. Winter was a harsh season, and she had seen too many homeless poor frozen in doorways, their faces white with frost. She was about to turn back when she heard a soft cough from the garden beyond the archway. Elena hurried through the archway and into the palace gardens, which lay shrouded in the gray twilight of early evening. The gardens were beautiful in the summer, filled with roses and lavender, but now they were bare and skeletal, the trees stripped of their leaves, the flower beds covered in frost. And there, huddled on a stone bench beneath a leafless oak, sat the old man. Elena let out a breath of relief and hurried over to him. "I thought you had gone," she said, sinking onto the bench beside him. "I worried all day." The old man looked at her with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "You worried about a stranger?" "Of course I did," Elena said, placing the pot of stew in his hands. You told me you would be here. I believed you." He stared at the steaming pot. This is good stew. The cook gave you this?" "The cook did not give it," Elena admitted. "But she allowed me to have it, after I explained the circumstances." "You told her about me?" "I told her I had a friend who needed a warm meal," Elena said with a small smile. "I did not mention that you are an old man sitting in the garden in the cold. She might have thought I had lost my senses." The old man laughed, a low, rusty sound, as though he had not used the muscles in a long time. "You are a rare creature indeed, Elena Maribel Hartwell." Elena froze. "How do you know my name?" The old man's expression flickered. "You told me yesterday, did you not?" "I did not," Elena said slowly. "I told you I was a maid. I did not tell you my name." A long silence stretched between them. The old man's sharp eyes studied her, and for just a moment, Elena felt a shiver of unease. There was something in his gaze that did not quite belong to a poor, homeless beggar. Something that spoke of power and authority and secrets. But then the moment passed, and the old man smiled, a soft, gentle expression that eased the lines of his weathered face. "Forgive me," he said. "I must have heard one of your fellow servants call you by name. I have sharp ears, even if my legs are not what they once were." Elena considered this. It was possible, she supposed. The servants' quarters were close to the archway, and voices carried easily through the stone corridors. "Very well," she said, deciding to let the matter rest. "Now, eat your stew before it grows cold. You need your strength." The old man obeyed, lifting the spoon to his lips. He ate slowly, deliberately, and Elena watched him with a small smile on her face. There was something almost elegant about the way he ate, even with the worn coat and tangled beard. He held the spoon as though he were accustomed to fine silver, not simple pewter. "You have good manners for a man who has clearly fallen on hard times," Elena said casually. The old man paused mid-bite. "What do you mean?" "Just that the way you hold your spoon, the way you eat, it is not the way most poor men eat. You take small bites. You chew slowly. You do not make a mess." She shrugged. "It reminds me of the way the nobility eat." For just a moment, the old man's eyes widened, and Elena saw something like alarm flash across his face. But it was gone, almost instantly, replaced by a rueful smile. "Perhaps I was not always a poor beggar," he said softly. "Perhaps I once had better fortune, and these are habits I have not yet forgotten." Elena nodded. "That makes sense. The world is cruel to people who fall from grace, but it is never too late to find your way back to dignity." The old man set down his spoon and looked at her with an expression she could not read. "You speak with the wisdom of someone much older than yourself." "My mother taught me," Elena said quietly. "She was a wise woman. She believed that everyone deserved a second chance. A third chance, if they needed it." "What happened to your mother?" The question came gently, without the sharp edge of curiosity. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes, but she pushed them back. "She died 3 winters ago," she said. The fever swept through the servants' quarters. The physicians came for the nobility, of course, but for us, we were on our own. The old man was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and placed his hand over hers. His touch was warm, despite the cold. "I am sorry," he said simply. "She must have been a remarkable woman, to raise a daughter like you." Elena blinked back tears. "She was. She taught me that kindness is never wasted, even when it seems to be. She said that the world is full of darkness, but that a single candle can push back the shadows." "A candle," the old man repeated. "Yes, that is what you are, Elena. A candle in the dark." They sat together in the winter garden as the sky grew darker and the stars emerged, one by one, scattered across the velvet sky, like diamonds on black silk. Elena told the old man about her life, her mother, the fever, the years she had spent working in the palace. He listened silently, asking occasional questions, his sharp eyes never leaving her face. And Elena found herself opening up to him in a way she had not opened up to anyone since her mother died. There was something about the old man that made her feel safe, made her feel as though she could speak without being judged. "Your Grace." The voice came from somewhere behind them, and Elena and the old man both turned. A footman stood at the edge of the garden, his face flushed with urgency. "Your Grace, I have been searching everywhere." The old man rose to his feet with surprising speed, his sharp eyes fixed on the footman. "Leave us," he said, his voice suddenly different, commanding, authoritative, nothing like the rough, cracked tone he had used with Elena. The footman hesitated. "But Your Grace, the Duchess is concerned," she said. "Leave us," the old man repeated, and this time his voice held a note of steel. "I will return shortly." The footman bowed and retreated, his face pale. Elena stared at the old man, her heart pounding. "Your Grace?" The old man turned to look at her, and even in the dim light of the garden, Elena could see the resignation in his eyes. "I am sorry, Elena," he said softly. "I did not mean for you to find out this way." "Find out what?" she asked, though part of her already knew. She had felt it from the beginning, the sense that something was not quite right about this old beggar, the way he carried himself, the way he spoke, the way he recognized her name without being told. The old man sighed and reached up to his face. His fingers found the edge of something. A mask, Elena realized, a cleverly crafted disguise that had transformed him into an old man with white hair and a tangled gray beard. He pulled it off, and Elena found herself staring into the face of the man she had only ever seen from a distance. The Duke of Ravenshire, Alistair Edmund Ravenshire, the most powerful nobleman in the kingdom. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. She felt as though the world had suddenly tilted beneath her feet, sending her spiraling into a dizzying abyss. "Elena," the Duke said, his voice gentle. "Please, let me explain." But Elena was already stumbling backward, shaking her head, her hands raised as though to ward off a blow. "No," she said. "No, this cannot be. You were the old man, the beggar. I shared my bread with you. I gave you my stew. I told you about my mother." "Yes," the Duke said, stepping toward her. "And I watched you show kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. You passed my test, Elena. You were the only one." "Your test?" Elena's voice rose, trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger. "This was a test? I was a test?" "I had to know," the Duke said, and for the first time, Elena heard something like desperation in his voice. "I had to know who among the people in my household was kind, because of who I am, and who was kind because of who they are. I have been deceived so many times, Elena. People pretending to care for me because of my title, my wealth. I had to find the truth. And you thought deceiving me was the way to do that." Elena's hands were shaking. "You thought pretending to be a poor, homeless old man, watching me give you my only food, watching me worry about you, watching me care for you, that was the way to test my character?" The Duke's face fell. "Elena, I did not intend to hurt you. I only wanted to see if anyone in this world could be truly kind without expecting a reward." "Then perhaps you were looking for kindness in the wrong way, Your Grace." Elena's voice was cold now, the warmth that had filled her moments before, replaced by a bitter chill. "People should not have to pass a secret test before they deserve dignity. Kindness should not have to be earned." She turned away from him, her heart pounding in her chest, tears streaming down her face. She had thought she had found a friend in the old beggar. She had thought she had found someone who understood her, someone who valued her for who she was, not for her position or her poverty. But it had all been a lie. "Elena, wait." She heard the Duke's footsteps behind her, but she did not stop. She could not bear to look at him, to see the face of the man who had deceived her so thoroughly. "Please," he called after her. "I know I have wronged you, but I am asking you to give me a chance to make things right." Elena paused at the edge of the garden, her back still to him. "Your Grace," she said, her voice flat, "I am only a maid. You are a duke. There is nothing between us that needs to be made right. You are the master of this household, and I am nothing more than a servant." "You are not nothing," the Duke said, his voice fierce. "You are more than anyone I have ever met. You are brave. You are kind. You are the only person in this kingdom who saw an old, broken man and offered him dignity." "I did not see a duke," Elena said quietly. "I saw a man who was hungry and cold and alone. I helped him because I thought he needed help. I did not help him because I wanted to pass some secret test. I helped him because it was the right thing to do." She turned, finally, to look at him. The Duke stood in the garden, still wearing the worn coat of the old beggar, his face raw with emotion. "And the worst part, Your Grace," Elena said, "is that you did not need to test me. You could have simply trusted me. You could have looked at the way I treat the people around me and decided whether I was worthy of your trust. Instead, you chose deception." The Duke's face crumpled. "I am sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know that is not enough. I know I cannot undo what I have done. But I am sorry, Elena. I never meant to hurt you." Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away, leaving the Duke of Ravenshire alone in the winter garden, the cold wind whipping around him as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The next few weeks were the most difficult of Elena's life. She threw herself into her work, burying herself in the endless routine of scrubbing floors, hauling coal, and avoiding the gaze of the Duke. It was not difficult to avoid him, as he seemed to be avoiding her as well. They moved through the palace like two ships passing in the night, never meeting, never speaking, always just missing each other. But Elena could not stop thinking about him. She remembered the way he had looked at her in the garden, the rawness in his voice when he had apologized, the way his eyes had pleaded with her to understand. She remembered the warmth of his hand over hers, the kindness in his voice when he asked about her mother. She remembered the old beggar, too, the man she had shared her bread with, the man she had worried about, the man who had listened to her stories and never judged her. And she began to wonder if the Duke was truly the villain she had made him out to be. But she pushed those thoughts away. She was a maid. He was the Duke of Ravenshire. What could possibly come of a relationship between them? It was impossible. Ridiculous. The stuff of fairy tales, not real life. And yet, she found herself watching him from afar, noting the way he walked through the palace with a stooped posture that spoke of a weight on his shoulders. She noticed the shadows beneath his eyes, the furrow of his brow, the way he seemed to be carrying a burden that he could not quite set down. And she found herself wondering if he had any close friends, any family, anyone who truly understood him. She knew the answer. She had seen the way the noblemen and women at court circled him like vultures, their eyes glittering with greed and ambition. She had seen the false smiles, the flattering words, the way they tried to curry favor with the powerful Duke. No one truly cared about him. No one saw the man beneath the title, except Elena. The thought terrified her. It was nearly midnight when Elena found herself walking past the garden where she had first met the old beggar. She had finished her duties hours ago, but she could not sleep. Her mind was too restless, too full of unanswered questions. She paused at the entrance to the garden, peering into the darkness. The trees were still bare, their skeletal branches reaching up toward the sky like grasping hands. The moon was thin and cold, casting pale light across the frost-covered ground. And there, sitting on the same stone bench beneath the same leafless oak, was the Duke of Ravenshire. He was not wearing the disguise this time. He was dressed in simple clothes, a plain coat and breeches, without the formal accoutrements of his rank. He looked young, Elena realized. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. He was looking at the ground, his shoulders hunched, his expression lost and lonely. Elena hesitated. Everything in her screamed at her to walk away, to leave him to his solitude, to protect her heart from the pain of another deception. But she could not. She could not leave him alone in the dark. "You will catch your death out here without a coat," she said softly. The Duke's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. "Elena, what are you doing here?" "I could not sleep," she admitted, stepping closer. "I have been doing a lot of that lately. I am sorry." The words came out rushed, almost desperate. "I am so sorry for what I did. I have been trying to find a way to make it right, but I do not know how. I have never met anyone like you, Elena, and I ruined it. I ruined everything." Elena sat down on the bench beside him, keeping a careful distance between them. "Your Grace, I have been thinking about what happened, and I have come to realize that while I was hurt by your deception, I cannot blame you for wanting to understand who to trust. The world is a difficult place, and people are not always what they seem." The Duke turned to look at her, his expression searching. "You are not going to tell me to leave you alone?" "No," Elena said. "I am not, because I believe that people deserve second chances, even the people who have hurt us. And I believe that the man I shared my bread with, the man who listened to me talk about my mother, who held my hand when I was sad, that man was real. Even if his appearance was a lie, his kindness was not." The Duke's face crumpled with emotion. "Elena, I do not deserve your forgiveness." "Perhaps not," Elena said, "but I am offering it anyway, because I cannot hate you, Your Grace. I have tried, and I cannot." Something shifted in the Duke's expression. The despair that had clouded his eyes gave way to something softer, something that might have been hope. "Please," he said, his voice hoarse, "call me Alistair. I cannot bear to hear you call me Your Grace, after everything we have shared." Elena hesitated. It was dangerous, this closeness. A duke and a maid, sitting together in the dark, speaking as equals. It was forbidden, improper. It could ruin her reputation, cost her her position, perhaps even worse. But when she looked into the Duke's eyes, Alistair's eyes, she saw the same man who had sat beside her in the garden and shared her bread. She saw a man who was lonely, a man who had been deceived so often that he had lost faith in the goodness of others. And she saw a man who was trying to change. "Alistair," she said softly. The name tasted strange on her tongue, familiar and forbidden all at once. A slow smile spread across the Duke's face, lighting up his features from within. "Elena," he said, "I have been dreaming of you saying my name for weeks." "Dreaming?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "That seems a bit excessive. You're Alistair." He laughed, a genuine, warm sound that sent a thrill through her. "I am many things, Elena, but excessive is certainly one of them. I have been told that I do nothing by half measures." "I can believe that," Elena said dryly. "After all, you disguised yourself as an old beggar to test the character of your servants. That is not the work of a man who does things by half measures. Alistair's smile faded. I know. It was foolish. And I hurt you, which was the last thing I ever wanted to do. I believe you, Elena said, and I forgive you. But I need to know one thing. Anything. She looked into his blue eyes, searching for the truth beneath the surface. Why did you care so much? Why did you need to know who would be kind to you, without knowing who you were? Alistair was silent for a long moment. Then he looked down at his hands, his expression darkening. My father, he said finally. He was a good man, a wise man, but he was also trusting, and he was deceived many times by people who pretended to care for him because of his title. He told me once that a title can make a man important, but only his choices can make him worthy. He said that the greatest test of a man's character is how he treats those who can give him nothing in return. Elena nodded slowly. He was right. He was, Alistair agreed. And when he died, I found myself surrounded by people who claimed to care about me, but who were only interested in my wealth and my power. I felt alone, surrounded by people, and yet utterly alone. He looked up at her, his eyes burning with intensity. And then I met you. You gave me your bread, Elena, your only bread, and you did not ask my name. You did not ask for anything in return. You simply saw a man in need and offered what you had. Because it was the right thing to do, Elena said. I know, Alistair said. That is what made it so remarkable. You did not do it to impress me. You did not do it because you wanted something. You did it because you are good, truly, fundamentally good, and I have not met anyone like you in my entire life. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. Alistair, you do not know me. You have seen me at my best. But I have flaws too. I am stubborn. I am proud. I have a quick temper and an even quicker tongue. I have seen your temper, Alistair said with a small smile. I saw it when you confronted me in the garden. It was magnificent. Elena laughed despite herself. You are impossible. I am impossible, Alistair agreed. But I am also sincere, Elena. I have never met anyone like you, and I would like to know you better, not as a test, not as a game, but as a man who wants to be worthy of the trust you have placed in him. Elena considered his words. It was reckless. It was dangerous. A duke and a maid had no business forming a friendship, let alone something more. But when she looked into Alistair's eyes, she saw the same man who had sat beside her in the garden and shared her bread. She saw a man who was lonely and trying to change, and she could not turn away from him. Very well, she said. I will give you a chance, but if you deceive me again, Alistair, I will not forgive you a second time. Understood, he said. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am worthy of your trust. That seems a bit excessive, Elena said dryly. Excessive is my specialty, Alistair replied with a grin. I told you, Elena, I do nothing by half measures. They sat together in the garden as the moon climbed higher in the sky, and for the first time in weeks, Elena felt something that she had thought lost forever. Hope. But their growing friendship did not go unnoticed. Lady Isadora Beatrice Montclair had been a regular visitor to Ravencrest Palace for years. A beautiful woman of 28, with golden hair and cold blue eyes, she had long hoped to marry Duke Alistair and become the Duchess of Ravenshire. Her family was wealthy and powerful, her connections impeccable, her reputation untarnished. But Alistair had never shown any interest in her. He was polite, of course. He was always polite. But there was a distance in his eyes when he looked at her, a wall that she could not seem to break through. Isadora had assumed that he was simply not interested in marriage. Many noblemen delayed matrimony until their 30s, preferring to enjoy their freedom before settling down. She had been content to wait, confident that eventually, Alistair would see that she was the perfect match for him. But then she had started to notice the way he looked at the maid. Isadora had always prided herself on her powers of observation. She noticed the way the Duke's eyes followed Elena whenever she passed through a room. She noticed the way he leaned toward her when she spoke, the way his voice softened when he addressed her. She noticed the way he seemed to light up whenever she was near. It was infuriating. A maid, a simple, uneducated, common servant. How dare she attract the attention of a man like Alistair Ravenshire? Isadora had begun to watch Elena closely, searching for flaws that she could use against her. She found plenty. Elena was too outspoken, too bold, too quick to speak her mind. She did not know her place. She did not understand the social hierarchy that governed their world. But the worst offense, in Isadora's eyes, was the way Elena treated the poor. She had heard the rumors, how Elena shared her food with beggars, how she gave her cloak to the cold, how she used her meager wages to buy medicine for the sick servants. It was absurd, pathetic, the mark of a woman who did not understand how the world worked. And now, apparently, she had caught the Duke's eye. Isadora decided that she needed to do something about it. She began to spread rumors among the household staff, suggesting that Elena was trying to seduce the Duke for her own advancement. She hinted that Elena was a schemer, a gold digger, a woman who would stop at nothing to climb the social ladder. The rumors spread quickly. The servants began to look at Elena with suspicion. Some whispered behind her back. Others openly sneered. But Elena did not seem to notice. She went about her work with her usual quiet dignity, treating everyone with the same kindness she had always shown. That only made Isadora angrier. The confrontation came at a dinner party, hosted by Duchess Serafina, the Duke's sister. Elena had been assigned to serve the guests alongside several other maids. She had been dreading the evening, knowing that Lady Isadora would be in attendance, along with many of the wealthiest and most powerful nobles in the kingdom. But she had no choice. She was a maid. She did what she was told. She moved through the dining room with practiced grace, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates as the guests laughed and chattered around her. She kept her eyes down, her expression carefully neutral, trying to make herself as invisible as possible. But Lady Isadora was determined to make her visible. "Excuse me," Isadora said, as Elena passed by with a tray of empty glasses. "You there, girl?" Elena stopped and turned, her heart sinking. "Yes, my lady? What is your name?" Isadora asked, her voice sweet and poisonous. "Elena, my lady." "Elena," Isadora repeated, as though tasting the name. "I have heard so much about you." Elena's stomach tightened. "I am flattered, my lady. You should be." Isadora smiled, but her eyes were cold. "I have heard that you are very generous with the poor, that you give your food to beggars and your coat to the cold. Tell me, Elena, is that true?" Elena hesitated. She could feel the eyes of the other guests upon her, could feel their judgment like a physical weight. "Oh, I try to help when I can, my lady," she said carefully. "How noble of you," Isadora said. "Tell me, do you also help the servants, the people who work alongside you?" "Yes, my lady, I do what I can." "And what about the nobility?" Isadora's voice was deceptively sweet. "Do you help them as well?" "I do not understand, my lady." "I mean," Isadora said, leaning forward, "do you help the nobility by staying in your proper place? Or do you think that your compassion gives you the right to step above your station?" The dining room fell silent. Elena could feel her cheeks burning, could hear the blood roaring in her ears. She wanted to flee, to run from the room and never look back. But she would not give Lady Isadora the satisfaction of seeing her run. "I do not think that compassion has anything to do with station, my lady," Elena said quietly. "I believe that kindness is a gift that all people can give, regardless of their wealth or position." How charming, Isadora said. And how naive. Tell me, Elena, do you truly believe that a maid can be equal to a noblewoman simply because she is kind? Elena met Isadora's eyes. She felt the weight of the moment, the judgment of the room, the precariousness of her position, but she could not stay silent. I believe that a person's worth is not determined by their wealth or title, Elena said, her voice steady. I believe that kindness is more valuable than gold, and I believe that cruelty does not make a noblewoman better than a servant. The room erupted into whispers. Isadora's face flushed with anger. You insolent creature, she hissed. How dare you speak to me that way? How dare you treat me like I am beneath you? Elena replied, her voice still calm. I have done nothing to you, my lady. I have only done my duty and tried to be kind to those in need. If that offends you, then perhaps the problem lies with you, not with me. Isadora rose to her feet, her face twisted with rage. You will be dismissed for this. I will speak to the Duke myself. He will not tolerate a servant who speaks to his guests with such impertinence. Lady Isadora. The voice cut through the tension like a knife. Everyone turned to see the Duke of Ravenshire standing in the doorway, his face expressionless. Alistair walked into the room, his eyes fixed on Isadora. I have been listening to your conversation, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. And I must say, I am disappointed. Isadora's face went pale. Your Grace, you were only trying to humiliate a woman who has done nothing to you, Alistair interrupted. A woman who has shown more kindness and dignity than anyone in this room. He walked over to Elena and took her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. Lady Isadora, Alistair said, turning to face the assembled guests. I must inform you that Elena Hartwell is not a servant. She is my betrothed. The room erupted into chaos. Gasps, exclamations. Lady Isadora's face went white with shock, then red with rage. Your betrothed? Isadora sputtered. That is impossible. She is a maid, a nobody. She is the woman I love, Alistair said calmly. And she has shown more grace and kindness in one evening than you have shown in your entire life, Lady Isadora. Elena stared at Alistair, her mind reeling. Betrothed? He had never mentioned anything about a betrothal. Was he telling the truth, or was this another deception? But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the truth. He meant every word. I am sorry, Alistair continued, turning back to the room. I had planned to announce my engagement at a more appropriate time, but I will not allow anyone to disrespect the woman I love. If Lady Isadora has a problem with my choice, she may take it up with me, privately. The room fell silent. Lady Isadora stared at Alistair, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. This is not over, she hissed, rising from her seat. You will regret this, Alistair, both of you. She swept out of the room, her gown rustling behind her like a storm cloud. The other guests exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain how to react. Alistair turned to Elena, his expression softening. Are you all right? I am fine, Elena said, though her voice was shaking. But Alistair, why did you say that? We are not betrothed. Not yet, he said, his eyes burning with intensity. But I want to be, Elena. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know it is fast. I know it is unconventional, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Elena stared at him, her heart pounding. You cannot be serious. I am a maid. You are a duke. It is impossible. Nothing is impossible, Alistair said. Not if we are brave enough to try. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alistair formally announced his engagement to Elena, and the scandal that followed was exactly as they had expected. The nobility was outraged. They called Elena a gold digger, a schemer, a woman who had manipulated the Duke for her own advancement. They called Alistair a fool, a man blinded by love, a disgrace to his family name. Duchess Serafina, however, was supportive. She had seen the change in her brother, had watched him emerge from the shell of bitterness and cynicism that had surrounded him for years. She knew that Elena was the reason for that change, and she welcomed her into the family with open arms. But Lady Isadora was not done with them. She had spent the weeks since the dinner party plotting her revenge. She had spread rumors about Elena's character, claiming that the maid had schemed to trap the Duke into marriage. She had enlisted the help of her powerful relatives, who had begun to pressure Alistair to break off the engagement. And she had uncovered a secret that she hoped would destroy Elena entirely. Elena was in the garden, tending to the winter roses, when Lady Isadora appeared before her. The noblewoman's face was triumphant, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Elena," Isadora said sweetly, "I have something to show you." Elena rose to her feet, her heart sinking. "What do you want, Lady Isadora?" "I want to show you the truth," Isadora said, handing her a letter. "Read it. It will explain everything." Elena took the letter with trembling hands. She did not want to read it. She knew that whatever it contained would be painful, but she could not turn away. She unfolded the letter and began to read. It was a letter from her mother, a letter that Elena had never seen before, and it contained a secret that shattered her world. Her mother had not been a servant. She had been a noblewoman, the daughter of a wealthy earl, forced to flee her home after she had fallen in love with a commoner. She had changed her name, hidden her identity, and lived the rest of her life as a servant, never telling a soul who she truly was. Elena stared at the letter, her hands trembling. "This cannot be true." "It is true," Isadora said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Your mother was Lady Eleanor Hartwell, daughter of the Earl of Ashworth. She was disowned by her family when she married beneath her station. And you, Elena, are the granddaughter of an earl." Elena's head spun. She felt as though the ground had fallen away beneath her feet. She had grown up believing that she was nothing, a maid, a servant, a nobody, and now she was learning that she was something else entirely. "You see," Isadora said, "you are not as lowly as you thought, but that does not change anything. You are still the daughter of a woman who brought shame to her family. And if you think Alistair will want you once he knows the truth, you are mistaken." "Is that what you think?" Elena said, her voice quiet. "Do you think that Alistair would reject me because of something my mother did decades ago?" "I think that Alistair will not want to marry a woman whose family is tainted by scandal," Isadora said. "I think he will thank me for revealing the truth before he made the mistake of marrying you." Elena looked at the letter in her hands. She thought about her mother, the woman who had raised her, loved her, taught her to be kind. She thought about the secrets her mother had carried, the shame she had lived with, the sacrifice she had made to protect her daughter. And she realized that her mother had not been running away from her past. She had been running toward a better future, a future where she could be judged by her character, not by her family's name. "Isadora," Elena said, looking up, "I thank you for showing me this letter." Isadora blinked, clearly taken aback. "You thank me?" "Yes," Elena said, "because now I know the truth. My mother was brave. She gave up everything for love. She chose to live with dignity and kindness, even when the world treated her with cruelty. And I am proud to be her daughter." Isadora's face twisted with rage. "You are a fool. The Duke will never accept you once he knows the truth." "He already knows," Elena said calmly. "I told him everything. He has been helping me search for the truth about my mother's family for weeks." Isadora's face went pale. "What?" He knows I am a noblewoman's daughter, Elena said, and he does not care. He loves me for who I am, not for my family name. Isadora stared at her, her expression a mix of shock and fury. Then she turned on her heel and stormed away, leaving Elena alone in the garden with the letter in her hands. Elena sank onto the stone bench, her legs trembling. She had lied. Alistair did not know the truth about her mother. She had not told him because she had not known until now. She had hidden the secret because she had been afraid of how he would react. But she knew that she could not hide it any longer. She needed to tell him the truth. She found him in his private study, bent over a stack of papers with a furrowed brow. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening into a smile. "Elena," he said, rising to his feet, "I was just thinking about you." "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "It is important." Alistair's smile faded. "What is wrong? You look pale." "I have been keeping something from you," Elena admitted, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. "Something I learned today, something about my mother." She told him everything, the letter, the truth about her mother's identity, the scandal that had driven her to live as a servant. She told him about the grandfather she had never known, the family she had never met. Alistair listened without interrupting, his expression unchanging. When she finished, he rose from his chair and walked over to her, kneeling before her. "Elena," he said softly, "I do not care about your mother's past. I do not care about your family's scandal. I care about you." "But you are a duke," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Your reputation." "My reputation can survive a scandal," Alistair said, "but I cannot survive losing you." He took her hand in his eyes burning with intensity. "I love you, Elena. I loved you when I thought you were a poor maid. I love you now that I know you are a noblewoman's daughter. I love you for your kindness, your courage, your unshakable belief in the goodness of others. And nothing, not your mother's past, not Lady Isadora's scheming, will change that." Elena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, Alistair. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then do not be afraid," he said, his voice gentle. "Face the world with me. We will weather any storm together." The wedding of Alistair Ravenshire and Elena Hartwell was the most talked-about event in Valadoria. The nobility had not forgiven the Duke for marrying beneath his station, but they could not deny the happiness that radiated from the couple. Elena was radiant in a gown of deep blue silk, her dark hair woven with pearls. Alistair stood at the altar, his eyes never leaving her face. Lady Isadora was not in attendance. She had retreated to her family estate, humiliated and defeated. The rumors she had spread had been exposed as lies, and her reputation had been shattered by her own jealousy and spite. But Elena felt no satisfaction in Isadora's downfall. She had learned, from her mother, that holding on to bitterness only hurts the person who carries it. She chose to let go of the anger and embrace the happiness that had finally come to her. After the wedding, Alistair took Elena to the garden where they had first met as strangers. The garden where a maid had shared her bread with an old beggar, never suspecting the truth of who he was. "I will never forget that night," Alistair said, his hand intertwined with hers. "I was so lost, so cynical. I had given up on finding goodness in the world. And then you sat beside me and offered me your bread." "I did not know who you were," Elena said, smiling up at him. "I only saw a man who was cold and hungry. That is what made it so precious," Alistair said. "You saw me, not my title, not my wealth, not my power. You saw a man in need, and you helped him." Elena leaned into him, her heart full. "My mother used to say that kindness is the truest measure of a person's worth. I did not understand it then, not truly, but I understand it now." "What did she mean?" Alistair asked. Elena looked up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear. "She meant that anyone can be kind when it is easy, but it takes courage to be kind when it is hard. It takes courage to share your bread with a stranger, to give your cloak to the cold, to stand up for someone who cannot stand up for themselves." She turned to look at Alistair, her eyes shining with tears. "I am proud of who I am, Alistair. I am proud of my mother and the sacrifices she made. I am proud of the choices I have made, even the difficult ones." "I am proud of you too," Alistair said. "You have taught me more than anyone else in my life. You taught me that a title can make a man important, but only his choices can make him worthy." Elena smiled. "Then let us make the right choices, together. Let us build a life that honors the people we have been and the people we want to become." Years passed. The kingdom of Valadoria changed, slowly but surely, and much of that change was thanks to Alistair and Elena. They established a charitable foundation in honor of Elena's mother, providing food, shelter, and education to the poor families of the duchy. They created programs to help servants build better lives, offering them opportunities to learn new skills and advance beyond their station. They advocated for kindness and compassion, setting an example for the nobility to follow. And they had children, 3 of them, each with their mother's warm heart and their father's fierce intelligence. The children grew up in a household where love was abundant and kindness was valued above all else. Elena never forgot her origins. She visited the servants' quarters often, sitting with the maids and footmen, listening to their stories, offering them the same kindness she had always offered. She was the Duchess of Ravenshire, but she was also the same girl who had shared her bread with a stranger. And Alistair loved her for it. One evening, when they were both older, Elena walked through the garden where they had first met. The trees were covered in blossoms, the flower beds bursting with color. It was a beautiful spring evening, filled with the scent of roses and the song of birds. And there, sitting on the same stone bench beneath the same oak tree, was Alistair. He was wearing simple clothes, not the formal coat and signet ring of a duke, but the worn coat and rough boots of an old beggar. He had even grown his beard out, letting it turn gray and wild. Elena laughed. "What are you doing?" "Testing you," Alistair said, his eyes twinkling. "I wanted to see if you would still share your bread with an old beggar." Elena sat down beside him and pulled a small loaf of bread out of her basket. She broke it in half and handed one piece to him. "Of course I would," she said. "I would share my bread with you any day, Alistair." He took her hand, his fingers warm and familiar against hers. "I know you would, Elena. That is why I love you." They sat together as the sun set over the garden, 2 people who had found love in the most unlikely of places, a duke and a maid, brought together by bread and kindness, and the belief that every person deserves dignity, regardless of their station. And as the stars appeared in the sky above them, Elena knew that she had found her place in the world, not as a duchess, not as a noblewoman, but as a woman who had chosen kindness over cruelty, compassion over judgment, love over fear. That was her legacy. That was the gift she had given the world. And that was the story that would be told for generations to come. The kingdom called Alistair a duke because of the crown he wore, but Elena taught him that true royalty was found in the heart of the person who stopped to help when no one else was watching. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness still exists in this world. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion can change everything. Leave a comment below. Have you ever helped a stranger without expecting anything in return? I would love to hear your story. And if you believe that true nobility comes from the heart, not from a title, then please subscribe and join our family of storytellers. Until next time, remember, the world needs more candles in the dark.